So T. Wood and Darren Till. First off, I've heard a lot of different rhetoric. Me and Chael have spoke on it. I know Chael did a video talking about it came to him right before the match that it was going to be a run out, that T. Wood was going to win. He did the best he could, saying, that's no detriment to Darren Till. It's just a matchup thing. Now, Brendan Schwab came out and he had a little bit different opinion. And Brendan Schwab's opinion, I can't say anybody's name. I can't even believe I have a podcast. Brendan came out and said, we were kind of duped. I think we all forgot how good T. Wood was. He's one of the greatest of all time. And the bigger point of this is that the UFC was rooting against him. And how bad that is that the UFC was rooting against him. He said that he knows some people within the UFC. He wasn't going to name anybody, which was kind of stupid because there's only so many people within a certain meeting that took place. So a lot of people listened to his show, and I'm sure without naming that person, he named him. And that person said, the UFC is rooting against T. Wood. They want Darren Till to win. And how awful that is. He goes on to say, Darren Till's going to be a champion at 170 pounds or 185 pounds, but T. Wood's one of the greatest of all times. He goes on to labor on the point of how unfair it is that T. Wood has been treated the way he's been treated by the UFC. All right, those are the talking points, and let me start from the top. The fight for me going into the fight was a toss-up. I would have been happy for either guy winning. Wasn't really rooting for either one of them. Was genuinely, I can't even talk. Genuinely pleased that T. Wood won. Did it in dominant fashion. Immediately after the fight was over, I felt stupid. I labored. When Randy Couture fought Tito Ortiz, I labored back and forth, who was going to win that fight. Even though I should have known. I was training with one of the guys. I know how good he was at wrestling and what a great style matchup it was. I bet $10,000 on Randy. I should have bet $200,000. Hindsight's 20/20, but it was an easy match. As soon as this match was over, as soon as T. Wood won, I felt exactly the same. And it wasn't because T. Wood knocked him down. T. Wood did not win that fight because he dropped him. He won that fight because he got on top of him. At some point during the 5 rounds, T. Wood was going to get on top. And that exact thing was going to happen. So I felt very stupid that I thought that Darren Till had an equal chance to win that fight. I fell for the hype, hook, line, and sinker. I'm not trying to quantify my knowledge on the sport like Chael did, saying, well, I fell for it, but I caught myself right before the fight. And he did. I would take that in this case too as a badge of honor. But let's move on. Let's move on to the point of T. Wood being disrespected and mistreated by the UFC and how wrong that is. I hope most of you or all of you And if you don't, as soon as I say this name, go Google it, spend 10 minutes to figure out who he was or who he is. Jim Brown, the second greatest running back of all time behind Walter Payton. Jim Brown quit at the height of his career to become an activist. A leader in civil rights. That's what he's been doing for 40 years. Jim Brown's opinion on the kneel, don't kneel situation with the professional football players and Colin Kaepernick is brilliant. The fact that it's coming from Jim Brown, it's over. It's checkmate. There is nothing to dispute anymore after listening to Jim Brown talk about the kneeling and the Colin Kaepernick. Jim Brown says you can be one or two things. You can be an activist or you can be a professional football player. As black athletes, we're always an activist to a certain degree. We want to help each other and this, that, and the other. But to be a true activist, you either need to be all in or not. And the reason that is because you work for a corporation and you have a job to do. And that corporation has to work within a certain structure. The structure within the NFL is it is bad for your company if an employee kneels during the national anthem. Wow. I want to support Colin Kaepernick. I think he needs to relook at this thing. I never want to disrespect this country. I never want to disrespect this flag. I never want to disrespect the veterans of this country. That is a very, very simple point. The fact that it's coming from Jim Brown makes it a little bit bigger. To me, it's the checkmate. And how it applies to T. Wood is, and I do have to back up for 1 second so I can discuss one of the newest hot topics or word tracks within mixed martial arts, i.e. cage fighting. And that is the greatest of all time. Everybody is trying to be the greatest of all time. A title that you cannot win. And it's talked about more now than anything. Every single time there is a UFC event, somebody is talking about the greatest of all time. It's stupid. And let me tell you why. Matt Hughes was the greatest of all time for the period of time that he defended his belt in the UFC 7 or 8 times. George St. Pierre was the greatest of all time. Or not the greatest of all time, the greatest of that time. Matt Hughes was the greatest of his time during his run. GSP was the greatest of his time during his run. The last 5 years, or not the 5 years, the last 3 years, I think you're looking at 2 people, Ben Askren and T. Wood, college teammates that have been the greatest of their time. There's no way to figure out who's the greatest of all time unless it's so obvious. Floyd Mayweather. You can take everything away from Floyd you want, but he's the greatest of all time at his weight class. There's no denying it. So we get off topic a little bit. Everybody wants to be the greatest of all time. Why? Why not just be the greatest of now and get your paycheck and take care of your family? So I think we're all wrong there. We all need to concentrate on who the champ is right now and respect them. Anyway, T Wood. T Wood has not been a good company man. When you go back to T Wood before he became champ, he didn't have a tremendous run. There was other people that could have fought Robbie Lawler for the championship, but he waited it out and he got it. The UFC gave him an opportunity to win the championship. And quite frankly, he has been at odds with Dana White since he won the championship. He hasn't been really good to work with. Because of his outspokenness, it has led to other things for him. It has led to rap stuff, movies, the TMZ thing. You don't really see him that much on the inner circles of calling fights. And not because he can't call fights, just because he's tough to work with. He hasn't been a company man. I want the fighters to have a bigger piece of the pie. But until they all get together and stop fighting and protect each other, it's never going to happen. So if you are working within a company, which is what T Wood does, he works within the company, you should be more of a company person. You're going to do better within the company if you're not fighting with your boss, if you're not threatening your boss. I am not trying to rub Dana White's ass on this thing. I think it was very disrespectful that he left and didn't do a presser. He was obviously upset that Darren Till didn't win. His and T Wood's relationship needs repaired. T Wood, to me, should now be in the respect position to start talking about, hey, let's make a George St. Pierre fight. Let's make a Conor McGregor fight. I think with T Wood's own actions after the fight and toning down his rhetoric, I think he's starting to get it too, that, hey, maybe I should be more of a company man. I'm the greatest fighter in this division, or maybe even the other division. Nobody can beat me. I'm gonna play along. I'm gonna play along. I'm gonna work better within my company. I do not had I been Dana White and one of my employees would have threatened me, I would have fired him immediately. I would have stripped him, cut his contract up, and went about that. Right or wrong, I'm the boss. You will not come out publicly and threaten me. Let's have a conversation. You know my number. So I agree, first off, that T Wood is the greatest of his time. Possibly the greatest of his time. Him and Ben Askren. Would love to see that fight. They're teammates. I guess they would never fight. I agree that it was disrespectful for Dana White to leave. He did give T Wood the fight of the night. I think that was possibly an olive branch. I think he's the one that picks those things. I'm not quite sure. But I also agree with Jim Brown that, hey man, you have to work within the guidelines of your company. And I understand that T Wood's not an employee. He's a 1099. He's an individual contractor. He's the champion of the world. But the reality is, guys, there's only a couple places you can go and earn a living in fighting. And the biggest and the major leagues of them all is the UFC. As UFC champ, you're going to have more opportunity when you're in the shine than going over and taking a better paycheck with Bellator. That's just true. Ask Rampage, ask Tito, ask anybody that's been over there. Now, you may make more money. You may make more money per fight. But in the overall scope of your business, it's better being the UFC champ. So, yeah, I wanted to cover that because, first off, Jim Brown made the end-all, do-all point on the kneel, don't kneel thing. I correlate that point with the UFC wanting a champion that they can work with easier. I think by T Wood coming out and saying, listen, if Till doesn't make weight, I'm not fighting Usman. There's two sides to that coin. I think T Wood's directly right, but he could have also kept that to himself and let the UFC know, hey, listen, I'm not going to do that, instead of coming out publicly, because quite frankly, unless they're going to fix something about the weigh-ins, us as fans should have a good fight picked out, lined up for us for the main event. We shouldn't lose main event after main event after main event. So, T Wood, congratulations on your performance. How this translates to this show, I guess my advice to T Wood would be to use all the tools that are available to you. Don't throw the tools away. You have a tremendous corporate giant that you can work with, and it'll be better for your career. And I'm a believer. I don't know who can beat you at 170 pounds, not named Ben Askren. I just don't know. I would love to see that fight. I would love to see GSP. I would love to see GSP T Wood. That's probably too dangerous of a fight for GSP. I think GSP is pretty cool with what he's saying is, hey, I want a big fight and a fight that I could win. Can GSP take T Wood down? Man, I don't think so. That's a great fight. I hope that fight gains some steam because I would love to see it as a fan. So that is it for